Okay, let's talk about this so-called alpha male. You've probably heard all the usual stuff, right? Well, today we're digging into a source that says, forget all that. It claims the most seductive trait isn't what you think. It's a hidden psychological trigger. So yeah, let's get right into it.
So what is it then? I mean, if it's not about being the loudest guy in the room or the most, dominant one, what's left? The source we're looking at today suggests it's something way more subtle, something that's happening entirely on a psychological level.
Yeah, we all know the classic list, right? Confidence, dominance, charisma, the whole package. But the source we're examining today, it says it's none of those things. It points to a very specific psychological trigger, a feeling that you can actually create in someone else. So the big question is, what is that feeling?
To get a handle on this, the source brings up something I think we've all felt. You ever meet a new person, maybe at work or in a class, and they make you feel, I don't know, just a little bit anxious, a little on edge? And then, the weird part is, a little while later, you realize you actually kind of like them? Well, according to this theory, that's no accident. And this leads us straight to the core concept here, which is something called psychological arousal. Now, that sounds fancy, but it just means your body is in a state of heightened activity. Your heart's beating a bit faster, you feel more alert. The source claims that anxiety is a perfect trigger for this state. And here's the kicker. Our brains can get their wires crossed. They feel that arousal, and instead of blaming the anxiety, they can accidentally link it to the person who's making them feel that way.
So, how does this actually play out? Well, the source breaks it down into a simple three-step process. Step 1, the encounter. You meet someone, and their presence makes you feel just a little bit anxious. Step 2, the catalyst. That little bit of anxiety kicks your body into that state of psychological arousal we just talked about. And then, step 3, the connection. This is where your brain does that funny little trick and misinterprets all that heightened energy as attraction. Okay, so we've laid all the groundwork. We've talked about anxiety and arousal and the brain getting confused. So what is this all leading to? This source claims it's not about your looks, your bank account, or your job title. The most seductive trait is actually the ability to make someone feel a very specific way.
And there you have it. Mild anxiety. I know, it sounds crazy, right? But the core argument of this source is that this one feeling, when it's triggered in just the right, controlled way, is the secret key to attraction. It's definitely not what you'd expect.
And just to be super clear, the source puts it in no uncertain terms. Here's the direct quote. The most seductive trait of an alpha male is precisely the mild form of anxiety that he is able to evoke within girls who meet him. I mean, that's it. That's the whole thesis right there in one sentence. Okay, so that's the theory, but how do you actually do it? The source then shifts from just explaining the idea to telling you how to, and these are its words, steal this effect for yourself. So let's take a neutral look at the advice it gives. So what if you're not a naturally intimidating person? The source suggests a couple of workarounds. The first one is to basically piggyback on a scary situation. So you meet them somewhere that's already high anxiety, like on a roller coaster or while watching a horror movie. The second method is to find some kind of unique way to create that mild anxiety yourself when you first meet. But, and this is a huge but, the source itself throws up a major red flag right here. It's basically saying, hey, be careful. It knows that trying to make someone anxious on purpose is walking a very fine line. And if you get it wrong, the consequences are pretty serious. And it doesn't get much more blunt than this. The source literally says, be careful how you do this because if you do it wrong, you might end up in handcuffs instead of in the hands of the girl that you like. Yeah, that really puts into perspective how high stakes this is. There's a huge difference between creating a little intrigue and just straight up causing fear. So let's just boil it all down. The big takeaway from the source is that our brains can get tricked. A little bit of mild, controlled anxiety can act as a powerful catalyst, and our minds can mistake that feeling for attraction, especially when we first meet someone. And all of this really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? Is this a genuinely powerful insight into how human attraction works on a deep psychological level? Or is it just a handbook for social manipulation? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.